morning, everyone. Our topic for today is the contemporary global governance. So before we proceed, let's talk about the objectives of our topics. So first is the participants were able to define the functions, challenges, and relevance of global governance. Second, the participants will understand deeply internationalism and globalism and its differences. And third, after completing this video, viewers or participants were able to determine the effects of globalization on governments. Fourth, the participants will be able to identify or know the relevance of state amid globalization. So, lastly, after finishing this presentation, participants will be able to understand and deeper know contemporary global governance.
What is global governance? Global governance refers to the process of designating standards, laws, rules, or regulations intended for a global scale. First is global governance law. International treaties, binding agreements, customary international law practices accept as legal obligation like non-intervention and diplomatic immunity. Second, the rules. Human rights standards, guidelines promoting individual rights. Trade rules established by organizations like the WTO to regulate international trade and resolve disputes. Third is regulations. Environmental regulations, protocols aim at protecting the environment. Security regulations, guidelines from the UN Security Council addressing threats to peace, including sanctions and peacekeeping mandates, and also a movement towards political cooperation among traditional actors aimed at negotiating response to problems that affect more than one state or region.
With the integration of COVID-19, could thus be the first real pandemic of the age of globalization, since this combines a certain underlying characteristics such as global scale, extremely fast speed of transmission, cross effect of global interterritorial interdependence of nations in the management of their respective epidemics, and growing complexity in the spatial organization of economic globalization. And since the passage of emphasize that in today's world, we face interconnected challenges that require global cooperation and announced understanding of how our action impact others.
The effect of globalization and government. The first is economic effect. Budgetary pressure. Globalization can increase budgetary pressure, which can cause government to shift spending towards subsidies and transfer. Economic power. Globalization can reduce the power of national governments to control their economies. Trade investment. Globalization can create new markets which increase trade and investments. Next is political effect. Political structures. Globalization can reduce the power of national government to determine their political structure. Next, international aid. Globalization can access to international aid and financial support. And next, international organization. International organization can help spread values like freedom and fight within countries. And the last one is social effects. Global governance. Provide a rule of a law at the international level which can protect the weak from the strong. Government can also play a role in globalization by establishing rules for international economic relationships.
institutions that govern international relations. International institutions are organizations that govern international relations through treaties and internal law. So first is the United Nations or UN. The United Nations oversees international peace, security, human rights, and development. Second is the World Trade Organization or WTO. So World Trade Organizations regulates international trade by promoting free trade agreements and resolving disputes. Third is the International Monetary Fund or IMF. So the International Monetary Fund provides financial assistance and economic policy advice to countries in crisis. And the fourth is World Bank Group or the World Bank Organization. So the World Bank Organization focuses on poverty reduction and development projects through financial and technical assistance. So lastly is the International Criminal Court or the ICC. So the International Criminal Court prosecutes individuals for war, crimes, genocide, and crimes against humanity.
Differentiate internationalism and globalism. Internationalism, a political principle that advocates greater political or economical cooperation among states and nations. Globalism, the belief that economic and foreign policy should be planned on a global basis rather than serving the interests of individual countries.
So, internationalism. So the first one is the idea that nations should work together. For example, countries' collaboration to form the Paris Agreement to combat climate change. And the second part is the idea that nations should cooperate instead of pursuing their own interests. For example, the World Health Organization or the WHO, a coordinating international effort to distribute COVID-19 vaccines equitably, even when wealthier countries could take priority in providing for their population. And the third part is the idea that nations should pool resources and work together across borders. For example, International Space Station where nations come together contributing resources and expertise for exploration of space. And lastly is the idea that people should interact as citizens of different nations. For example, the European helps students and working professionals to learn in other countries or work elsewhere in the country and as a result cultivate global citizenship and mutual respect.
Globalism. The first one, the idea that the world should be treated as a single unit. The second one, the idea that economic and foreign policy should be planned globally. The third one is the idea that national boundaries are relatively insignificant. And the fourth one, the belief that the world should be treated as a proper sphere of a political influence. So this is the example of the first one. The idea that the world should be treated as a single unit. This is the example. The Paris Climate Agreement. The Paris Climate Agreement is a clear example of the idea that the world should be treated as a single unit when it comes to tackling global issues like climate changes, like international treaties signed by 195 countries like that, and recognize the countries the global problem required a collective response. So the second example is that for the idea that economics and foreign policy should be planned globally. The WTO is an international body that facilitates global trade and establish rules that ensuring that trade policies across countries like consistent and fair trading. It aims to promote the free trade, reduce trade barriers, and resolve disputes between countries, and for instance, countries may enter the global trade. And the third one example is the idea that national boundaries are relatively insignificant. For example, the European Union (UE). The European Union is an example where national boundaries are significantly less important than certain political, economic, and social decisions. The UE political, economic, and the economic union is of 27 European countries that shares common policies and law in many areas, including trades, immigration, and agriculture. And the last one, the fourth one, the belief that the world should be treated as a proper sphere for political influence. For example, United Nations (UN). The United Nations, founded in 1944, represents the effort to create global political body that addresses international peace and security, human rights, and global cooperations. Through the Union, countries can collectively address issues like war, conflict, and poverty, diseases, and human rights violations.
Roles and functions of United Nations. First is maintain international peace and security. It is works to prevent conflicts, mediate disputes, and ensure global stability. Second is protect human rights. It is to promote and safeguard fundamental rights and freedoms for all individuals. Third is deliver humanitarian aid. This is to provide emergency assistance during crises such as natural disaster, conflicts, or health emergencies. Fourth is support sustainability development and climate actions. This is to advocate for global economic growth, environmental preservation, and equitable development. Fifth, it upholds international law. This is to establish and enforce legal frameworks to regulate relationship among nations.
So here is the challenges that they face in the global governance in the 21st century. So first is infectious diseases. So infectious diseases are illness caused by the microorganisms such as bacteria, viruses, fungi, and parasites. So these diseases can spread rapidly, especially in our interconnected world, posing significant public health threats. Examples include pandemic like COVID-19 and diseases like tuberculosis, malaria, and HIV and AIDS. The spread of infectious diseases often leads to widespread illness, mortality, and economic disruptions, making them priority in the global health agendas. The other one is ethnic conflicts. So ethnic conflicts arise when groups with distinct cultural, racial, or religious identities come into conflict over issues like resource, territory, political power, or social inequality. So these conflicts often lead to violence, displacement, and human rights violations. So the impact can last for generations, creating a long-term inequality in regions. I will give you some examples of the ethnic conflicts in the Philippines. So one of these examples is the Moro conflict. So pressing threats. So pressing threats refers to urgent challenges that require immediate action to prevent negative impacts on societies. These include issues like political stability, economic crisis, environmental divisions in the aforementioned topics. So global interconnected means that these threats often transcend national borders, requiring international cooperation to address them effectively.
Relevance of a state amid globalization. First, we have sovereignty. Sovereignty refers to the supreme authority of a state within its own borders. It implies the right of a state to govern itself without interference from other nations. Therefore, state maintains authority over domestic affairs and policy decisions. Second, we have cultural identity. Cultural identity refers to a shared values, beliefs, traditions, and practices that defines a nation or a group of people.
It is a sense belonging and connection to a particular culture. Therefore, states protect and promote national culture and values. Third, we have regulation. States enact laws and regulation govern various aspects of society, such as trade, environment, and social welfare. These regulations can align with or diverge from global standards. Therefore, states enforce law and regulation that may align with or diverge from global standards. Fourth, we have economic policy. Economic policy refers to the government's strategy and action to manage the economy. This includes policies related to taxation, spending, trade, monetary policy. Therefore, states balance global economic integration with international interests and security. Consequently, while globalization presents challenges and opportunities, states will play a vital role in maintaining sovereignty, preserving cultural identity, regulating various aspects of society, and managing economic policies to serve the interests of their citizens. Conclusion: global governance is evolving with increased global challenges and interconnectedness. Institutions like UN play crucial roles, while states navigate globalization to balance the national and international priorities. Continued adaptation and cooperation will be essential in addressing global issues and managing international relations.